Presenting Mrinal.
Tagore's female protagonist from the short story titled
Streer Patra.
The Wife's Letter. It is one of Tagore's extraordinary piece of work. It is written in the form of a letter written by a typical Bengali upper-middle-class wife to her husband of 15 years, which constitutes the whole story. It was published in the year 1914 in Sabuj Patra, a monthly literary magazine, then published from Calcutta. According to the author himself, the short story is his first attempt towards writing a feminist text. This revolutionary work revolves around the female protagonist.
Mrinal.
A beautiful, extrovert, intelligent wife in an upper-middle-class, patriarchal zamindaar Bengali household of the British Raj period. She's a poet who, without anyone's knowledge, secretly captures and expresses her emotions as poems. She is a deep thinker, and importantly, she not only asks bold questions but protests against any atrocities that she comes across, even if she is the only one to do so. Through the character of
Mrinal.
Tagore highlighted many patriarchal customs and the associated agony, humiliation and moments of mundane life of women that prevailed during the pre-progressive colonial era. For instance, her mother's concern about her daughter's extraordinary intelligence, which she thought was a curse. For women who were capable of thinking were regarded dangerous in those days. It was her beauty that was to be patronized, not her intellect. And Tagore beautifully expresses the above with his perfectly stitched garland of words. The story primarily focuses on
Mrinal.
her husband, an upper-class zamindar, her sister-in-law, whom they all called Barobo, or the elder bride in the family, her sister-in-law's sister, Bindu, and her brother, a revolutionary.
Mrinal.
Was chosen as a bride in the aristocratic family because of her beauty. But it was her intellect that made a mark in the story. In those days, women were confined to the inner walls of the house. Her sister-in-law, Barobo, had accepted the system unquestioningly. But she was different from the rule-abiding rest of the women in the family. She was an independent thinker. She took informed stance on several domestic matters. Unfortunately, after her daughter dies soon after birth, she became even more lonely. And, unlike any aristocratic lady of the time, she finds no human beings but domestic cattle as her close friends. For being so different, she is constantly mocked by her in-laws.
Mrinal's.
Life changes when Bindu, her sister-in-law's sister, comes to stay in the family. After her parents died, Bindu was tortured by her extended paternal family. So, she runs away to the refuge of her sister's, Borobu's, household. The family is not happy at this development. They treat Bindu like an unpaid servant, with
Mrinal.
alone standing up for her. To get rid of Bindu, she was however soon married off to another household, to a mentally challenged, violent man. Terrified of her husband and mother-in-law, Bindu runs away from her in-law's household within 3 days of the wedding and comes back to
Mrinal.
This time even Mrinal could not protect Bindu and has to succumb to patriarchal norms and let her go back to her husband.
Mrinal's.
Desperate attempt to rescue Bindu through her brother also failed, and a few days later her brother brought back the news of Bindu's suicide.
Mrinal.
was devastated by the news and also when she came to know that before committing suicide, Bindu left a note for her which Bindu's in-laws burned.
Meanwhile, Mrinal
Has managed to get permission to go on a pilgrimage to Puri, a coastal town by the Bay of Bengal, with her relative. Standing on the seashore, she makes up her mind and writes a letter to her husband declaring that she would never return to their house. The idea of a woman's right to choose her own path is elaborately illustrated in this story. In this story, Tagore also questioned the system of arranged, often loveless marriage and the entrapment and enslavement of women as wives. The letter is a masterpiece and is probably Tagore's anguish which comes out in narrating a progressive end to. Starting with a common humble addressing note,
Sri Charana Kamaleshu,
which means at your lotus-like feet. She ends up addressing herself as
Charana Tal Ashray Chinna,
which means separated from your lotus-like feet, a sarcastically used word, which actually signifies a rejection for all those so-called relationships she left behind. In the letter, she informs her husband of 15 years, but I shall not return to 27, Makan Barrel Lane, her in-laws' address, ever again. I saw what happened to Bindu. I have realized the position women have in this society. I don't want to go through it anymore. She finally declares,
Amio বাঁচবো, এই বাঁচলুম।
and I shall live. Here, I live. Instead of killing herself like Bindu.
আমিও বাঁচবো, এই বাঁচলুম।